In the tier 2 scene, the talk of the town is an AWPer. Again, Julian Regali Hardial is a player who's been grinding his way up through the lower levels of this game for the past 3 years. His ascension and development have both been startlingly fast, taking him from an unknown entity on a Romanian side to the driving force behind this Copenhagen Flames roster. Since Regali was last featured on this channel, he has taken his game to new heights, outgrowing his Academy League compatriots. So let's dive into exactly what Julian is doing to be driving the tier 2 scene so crazy. I'm KingT, and this is Prospect. Being that he is a primary AWPer, we have to talk first and foremost about his skills with the big green. Regali's speed with the AWP is apparent to even the most casual of observers. He takes and makes shots with startling speed, and it's matched by a pretty impressive hit rate. Now, he's no Jame in this regard, don't get me wrong, but it's impressive considering how many shots he's taking and how little interval there is between each one. Here we see when he's taking those stable, easy shots, Regali rarely misses. However, when he ups the speed to maximise his multi-kill potential, yes, there is a tendency for the occasional bullet to go astray, but skim through any m0NESY demo and you'll see pretty much the same thing. We'll go into depth about his AWPing in the next segment, but first let's have a look at the rest of his mechanics. Regali is a fairly solid rifler. Not completely mind-bending, it's obviously not his primary skill, but very solid for a player who primarily makes a living with a scope. He doesn't always play the most high-impact roles when he has a rifle, though he can find a good multi-kill here and there, but he mostly just trades, does what his IGL needs, and isn't a huge deficit when he does have an AK or an M4 equipped rather than an AWP. Finally, Regali's pistols. Now this is another standout skill of his, and one that, well, comes with a lot of consistency. Now you'll rarely see him pick up a pistol ace, but man, does he just seem to average 2.5 frags per pistol round. His T-side pistols actually come out stronger in the statistical balance. I think with a Glock he might do some of his finest work. Now he's not great at flicking to heads, I think that might be what causes the disparity, but his tracking aim is impeccable, allowing him to convert many of these Glock frags. Now all of Regali's demos show a little bit of each of these skills. He does always show up his AWPing prowess, but the very greatest of performances he's had so far have required a little bit of each. On the less mechanical side of things, Regali does show a good amount of composure and control. Whilst he's able to make miracles happen in high stress scenarios, he's also able to slow it down and work things in a proper and structured way when he needs to. Being effective in both high and low leverage situations is key, and this is a thing that some AWPers do struggle with, as you'll see many of them tend to miss their shots when they're given too much time to consider what to do next. Regali is an AWPer who carries the game off the back of his skills with the big green. The CT side is therefore filled with a number of opening attempts, as well as a high degree of mobility. Let's take a look at Overpass as a great example. Regali is constantly switching it up, taking fights in mid, popping up and taking the challenge at short, and even on occasion looking for fights in connector. In ideal scenarios, the fight presents itself, and Regali can feast. What's great is that even when he doesn't get rewarded with these opening fights, with these conflicts, Regali knows how to use his movement to optimise his positions later in rounds. When he needs to fall back to cover a different gap, he does. This is usually to allow his riflers to make more active plays in the mid-round, which is where they tend to shine. But then, in rare occasions where he does need to go out on his shield, he's more than willing to do so, because that's quite an important part of his playstyle. Regali, he ain't a bitch. One of my favourite CT rounds from the ghillie-suited Romanian came against Astralis on Nuke. He spent most of this half camped at ramp, sent there in order to allow him to rotate more efficiently. This round is much of the same, as he's posted up waiting for a T-side play that probably never comes. In this round, Astralis decided to push, and Regali gets flashed off his angle, but still manages to land the first shot. Regali falls back a little, but not entirely, knowing that TMB is swinging out from hell, making sure he won't get overwhelmed immediately. After a few moments of silence, Regali takes off to cover secret, knowing that that's the logical gap that needs to be exploited by Astralis' lurker. Once the outer lurk is cleared, all that remains is to close out the round on the A bomb site. Regali shows off his speed, stepping out in front of the diffuser and quick-scoping Mixter. On the T side, there are a couple defining features that make Regali Regali. Let's begin with something that isn't at all mechanical, and that's how well Regali works his picks. Whilst his T-side play isn't as rich in opening attempts, it still contains a fair bit of heads-up play. For example, on overpass, Regali loves to abuse his rage advantage to find picks onto the A bomb site while scouting around the bathrooms area. Here we see him taking his time clearing these angles and setting up these fights. In these sorts of scenarios, he really doesn't miss, and it allows him to find a different kind of opening, one that isn't necessarily measured in stats, but still allows him to crack open a bomb site. What I like is that Regali doesn't try to do too much in these kinds of rounds. Now, there are certain moments where he does show off some phenomenal speed, some phenomenal AWPing, but he never pushes the issue beyond what the team's strategy dictates. Now, this measured, slower part of his game is interesting, because Copenhagen Flames love to use it to find a pick and then accelerate so quickly off the back of it, which brings us back to the realms of speed. And it's this quickness in both his wrist and his mental processing that makes Regali such a threat in these post-plant scenarios on the T side. It's in this exact context that we see many of Regali's flashiest highlights. It's in these bomb-down scenarios that he picks his peaks perfectly and then converts them precisely and with pace. Now, the unsung hero of this post-plant play is his rifling. Now, he often switches to an AK or M4 when he has to hold off at least two angles and doesn't really have a good way of isolating himself from one or the other. This awareness is really impressive, as he's constantly analysing the situations he's found himself in and then making the right read and adjustment to give himself those better odds. Overall, Regali deserves a lot of credit in the way he plays with the AK on the T side. He's willing to be far more assertive than most, which combined with his individual level allows Bertrand Sky to use him like any other rifler. Alright, this is only the second ever episode that will feature grading, and we're not likely to get much better than this, at least for a while. Firstly, his current level sits around a 4. Now, he's not quite a star, at least right this second. We can't really say that due to a lack of LAN experience really, and also not many matchups against players or teams in the top 20 right now. He wouldn't be overlooked as a tier 1 player, not by any means. He definitely has all the mechanical skills and some of the game understanding to fit in at that level. Now, what does the future hold for this young Romanian? Now, Regali's potential, now it's either going to be a 4 or a 5, and I'm not going to quite go all the way to say a 5. Now, a 5 is a superstar. There aren't even very many in the world, but he's a very strong 4. Like, he'd be one of the probably 10 best AWPs in the world pretty comfortably, I think, if he kept developing on this potential, breaking into the top 3 maybe on occasion, but not consistently, to the likes of a Simple or a Zywoo, who have pretty much monopolized Tier 1 AWPing. One comparison I'd like to make is with a prime level device. Now, we are now focused on his Tier 2 play. There's a lot of flashiness, a lot of highlights, but the fact that he's able to be so solid in mid-rounds with his AWP, play on the rifles and the pistols, just generally be effective and consistent, that sounds a lot more like a prime device to me. So if he can bring that sort of thing into the Tier 1 play, maybe not be as reliant on the flashy stuff, he'll be a star for years to come. Alright, so that was Regali, the Danish-speaking Romanian AWPer. I've been KingT. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, tell me your thoughts on Regali in the comments, and yeah, that's all for this one. Goodbye.